Hello and welcome. I'm Claire Feldman, your host and guide on this journey to thriving in private practice without the burnout. Are you a passionate therapist who's struggling with the entrepreneurial side of things? Do you wish you could serve great fit clients at times that suit you? Are you seeking financial stability so you can continue doing what you love? If so, then you're in the right place. I know firsthand the difficulties of navigating the business aspects of therapy, from building a website to managing social media, but I've made all the mistakes so you don't have to. Together we'll explore how you can build and grow your dream practice. So let's get started. Hi everybody and welcome to today's podcast episode where we're going to be chatting about all things Instagram related. Last week within the membership community, we had a whole week that was dedicated to marketing our private practices using Instagram. So there was loads of amazing discussion, questions, and so it just seemed quite natural for me to jump on here and to share kind of some of the key learnings from last week. I suppose the first place to start is if you've listened to any of my previous podcast episodes, you've probably heard me mention having a bit of a love-hate relationship with social media, as I know many of you do as well. I'm very adamant and clear with people that if you absolutely detest, despise, can't stand social media, then maybe you don't need to be on it. And maybe there are other ways in which you can be proactive around your marketing, and there are other ways in which you can fill your practice. That being said, I think there is something about maybe being more open-minded to how we can use social media in a way that does maybe feel more authentic and more aligned with us. Because as much as I have a little bit of a love-hate relationship with it, I think the bits that frustrate me with it are things of my own doing. And what I mean by that is that I just spend far too much time doom scrolling on Instagram, far too much time going down rabbit holes or getting struck with comparisonitis, all these things that aren't good for us in any way at all. That's probably the frustrations that I have with it, but it is of my own doing and it is something that I can work on and that I can control. The positives for me of Instagram is that I can't deny it's been a great platform for marketing my mentoring business. It's been a great platform for connecting with other therapists. And I guess that's what I'm sort of bringing to you today to perhaps have a little bit of a think about if you're using Instagram, are you using it in the best possible way? And do we need a little bit of a change in how you approach using the platform and how you think about using the platform? So I guess that's the first thing that I'm going to invite you to do, because what I see a lot of posts maybe in Facebook groups and things like that, where I will see other therapists that say that they're using Instagram and that they're using it to market their private practice, but they don't get any clients from it. So there's two parts to this. The first one is I would always see your social media marketing as something that is going to complement whatever other marketing that you're doing. So people like to really consume content in a variety of different ways. And we also know that if someone is interested in working with someone, they tend to like to see their content and have a number of different touch points of what they're doing. So what I mean by that is they basically will want to check you out in a variety of different ways before making a decision about whether they want to have a call with you or whether they think you might be the therapist for them. So what that might look like in reality is they may come across your directory profile. They may go to your website. They may read a blog on your website. They may go and listen to a podcast episode that you've done, and they may come over to your Instagram to check out you on there. So the reason why social media could very much be a great complement to the marketing that you already have in existence is that in places like Instagram, there is the opportunity for them to connect with you on a more personal level, to get a sense of who you are, your personality, your unique insights on your particular niche area, They get to hear your voice. They get to see what you look like. They get to see you as human, effectively. And I think more than ever that is going to be so important now for clients who are trying to find a therapist, is that they're going to want to find a therapist that they do see as human, that they connect with, and that they feel that you're the right person to help them with their specific problem. So as much as having like a really good quality profile is important, having a really well written and engaging website is super important. The kind of advantage that social media does have is that we get to see you in a much more human way. So that's, even if it's not a platform that's generating inquiries directly, that it can actually still be a worthwhile platform to be on, as long as you're using it in the right way, in that we're seeing you and we're seeing that authenticity. Where I think therapists say that they're using the platform, but they're not getting anything from it, is where they're not being intentional around how they're using it. They're just maybe sharing random posts about their availability, sharing random, inspirational quotes, or they're using it really inconsistently and they're maybe just showing up like once a fortnight or once a month or something like that. So if you are going to use Instagram to support your marketing efforts, you do need to be intentional around how you're using it. You do need to be intentional about the quality of content that you're going to be put on there. And you do need to think about ways in which you can be visible and share who you are and your personality in a way that kind of feels comfortable for you. And then the second part of that is that there are therapist accounts out there that are using Instagram really well, and that they are actually attracting clients directly through Instagram. And that we can see that actually it's because the quality of, number one, the quality of effort and consistency that they're putting on there, but also that they are really creating content that is attracting and engaging their ideal client. So that's just something for you to kind of reflect on and think about, is how are you using the platform? Like, how are you showing up? What's your intention? And are you creating content that really resonates and engages with your ideal client? And if the answer is no to those, then that's probably something that you want to have a think about. And these are some of the things that I'll kind of cover through this podcast, is what are the things that you can then think about to ensure that you are using it more effectively. So with Instagram, really out of all of the social media platforms, I really feel like Instagram is the platform that is about community. It's about engagement. And so when we're creating content on platforms like this, we need to think about, what content can I create that is going to engage the people that are following me? So it's not going to surprise you that one of the first things that I'm going to say about using Instagram is thinking about your ideal client, is having a really clearly defined niche and knowing who it is that you're speaking to when you are creating this content. So when somebody lands on your Instagram profile, when they land on your grid, that they could see quite clearly and quite easily what type of therapist you are, what your specialism is, and what kind of topics you speak about and talk about. So one of the first things I was getting the group to do last week was, number one, getting crystal clear on who their ideal client is. And then number two, really looking at their Instagram grid and really seeing, does it speak to their ideal client? If you were to look at it and look at it objectively and stand back, like, would it be really clear if I was to stare at your Instagram grid, what your specialism is and what your kind of key topics are that you talk about? We have to remember that we live in an era, as challenging as this is, that people's attention spans are really, really short. People will decide within seconds if a post is for them. People, like I've said at the beginning, I'm a terrible doom scroller. People will be doom scrolling through Instagram. And is your content going to actually capture them and make them stop and make them read or make them click and watch your reel? So this is sort of what we're up against when we look at things like Instagram. The other flip of that, however, is it's a free platform. It's a free platform where the possibilities and opportunities for organic growth and for attracting your ideal clients are really great. But obviously, it's very much influenced by the effort and the consistency that you do put in there. So some of the things that you can have a little bit of a think about when it comes to your Instagram profile is your specialism clear? And what are the things that you could potentially tweak or change that might help support that? Well, number one is having consistency of a brand. So consistency of a brand means that you have your color themes are consistent across your Instagram profile. And ideally that those color themes would be consistent around your profile, but also on other platforms like your website also. I would want in your profile picture that it's a really clear picture of your face, that you can see you clearly. And ideally, if you're able to change the background of your profile picture, that's of your brand colors as well, so that it really stands out and it really pops. Then in your bio, ideally in your bio, there would want to be something that I can read very clearly and very succinctly that is showing me you as a therapist and what your specialism is, and then clear instructions to your ideal client of what you would like them to do. So that might be, so just off the top of my head, therapists that I know are obviously very good at this is Elsie Owen, for example, the people-pleasing therapist, or Natalie, the perfectionism therapist, that if you were to go now and to click on their grids, you would see quite clearly the consistency of colours and brands throughout their grids. You would see very clearly their niche statement, their specialism at the top, and they would have some sort of call to action. And that might be click the link below here to book a call. It might be download my free guide. It might be send me a DM or something like that. But they're trying to guide the people who come to their account and land on their grid to take some sort of an action to then go somewhere. So that's the first thing that you can have a think about, is review your own grid. Is it clear who I work with and who I help? Is it branded? Does it look? It doesn't have to be perfect. We don't need perfection on Instagram, but it does need to try and look kind of tidy and ideally consist. Again, if we come back to the whole doom scrolling thing, that if somebody is kind of just mindlessly scrolling through Instagram, where kind of brand consistency is really helpful is that people will get used to the colors you use, the fonts you use, your logo. Like people's subconscious mind will register that sort of thing. And so when they are scrolling and they're coming through a post, like I can tell straight away, I can see an Elsie Owen post or a Natalie post. I can tell straight away before I've really registered, because I'm really familiar and aware with the brand that they have and the colors and the tones and all of that kind of stuff. So that brand consistency is really important. So people start to learn that it's you and that it's your account. So if that's something that isn't, if you look objectively at your own profile and that's something that's not coming across, it's probably something that you would want to consider. Where having a niche is so helpful in this is that you can have that your URL in terms of your username on Instagram literally can have your niche written into it, such as the people-pleasing therapist. In your little bio, that's also really keyword optimized, so that if people are searching around the particular theme or topic of what your niche is, that those keywords again could go in and help you to be found on the search engine. And these are things like, it's really like 5-10 years ago, we wouldn't have been thinking at all that, as a therapist, a client potentially could find us on Instagram. And this is the reality now that it's happening. Our search behaviors have changed, and where traditionally it would have been going to directory profiles or just going to Google. Although Google search is still the number one search engine that people will go to when they're searching for a therapist, it doesn't have the lion's share just quite as much as what it used to. Now what we're seeing is that people are using search engines like the search function in Instagram. People are using YouTube searches, like people are searching in different ways. So I think for us being more proactive in our marketing, what we need to think about is these different touch points in where people potentially might end up finding us. If I can, I guess, share myself from my own personal experience when I was looking for a therapist recently, that I was looking for a therapist specializing in working with ADHD, inattentive ADHD. Now, my first port of call, because I'm old school, I'm a little bit more mature. My first port of call was to go to Google because that's what I know. That's what I'm familiar with. So I went to Google. I did eventually, now it wasn't easy, I have to say. I did eventually find a therapist whose profile that I had connected with, and did end up booking a call with her. But that that search wasn't easy, and I had to do a lot of digging, and it sort of made me think, like, what would I have done if I hadn't have found through my Google search somebody that I'd wanted to work with? So the next thing I was kind of thinking is, well, I listen to loads of podcasts, specifically around ADHD in females and ADHD in female entrepreneurs quite often. So I probably would have gone through some of those podcast episodes that I listened to, where there were ones where they had maybe therapists on, to see if that might be a good fit. I'm in Facebook groups, Facebook communities, specifically for ADHD female entrepreneurs. I possibly would have posted in there and asked for a personal recommendation, or I follow loads of accounts, and potentially I would have went into the search function of Instagram and typed in ADHD therapist. So that's just a little way of highlighting how different perhaps our search behaviors are compared to what they would have been maybe 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Now, because I am slightly older, I will naturally do that default of going into Google, perhaps first of all. But how many maybe other people in their 20s, 30s aren't necessarily doing that they are going straight to the search function, or they are finding therapists through listening to podcast episodes and really connecting with them and then going and following them on Instagram. So it's important, I guess, for us to be aware of that just because our behavior might be something different, it doesn't mean that actually your ideal client might be searching and looking kind of somewhere else. So we want to think about where your ideal client is hanging out. And if your ideal client is hanging out on Instagram as a user, then you might want to think about how do I create that content where they're going to find me on there. If I think about even a slightly different, but the last two business mentors that I've worked with personally, I find them through the search function of Instagram is actually where I find them. Because when I did use Google trying to find like a business mentor, there was 1,000,001 options that came up. Whereas actually with the last mentor that I worked with, I was able to put in specifically, I think like a membership coach or something like that. And I was able to specifically find a mentor coach that I could work with who specialized in helping people with their membership community. So it's so niche and so specific, but Instagram is where I found her and was an ideal fit mentor to work with. So that's something, although that's a slightly different search that I was doing, that's what I want you to start maybe planting that seed in your mind, that actually with a platform such as Instagram, that people can be really specific about what they're searching for, and they can come and find your profile. And if they can see like posts that really they relate to, that they're nodding their head kind of along to, that they're feeling like, oh my goodness, this therapist really gets me. This therapist is actually just really normal. She's not this stereotype, blank slate, cardigan wearing therapist, that she seems like really normal. She seems down to earth. She seems to get me. Maybe she's had lived an experience of the difficulty that I'm having. But I hope you can maybe see how that could actually be such an advantage to your marketing. And I think in 2025, when there is so much noise out there, there is so much available. There is now so much, obviously, AI that is out there, that I think what's going to be really important more than ever is probably that bit around being authentic, that bit around just being human, that bit around connection. And Instagram is probably one of those platforms that can be really supportive of that. So what you want to think about then is when you're creating your content, how are you creating engagement? So that can be through things like sharing a post, sharing your perspective on something, and asking your audience, like, what are their thoughts on it? What's their perspective? It could be things like you're in your stories and you're sharing a view on something, or you're providing a little education on something. And then maybe you're putting up little polls or little quizzes and getting people to engage in the stories in that way. The more with Instagram, the more that there is engagement on your account, the more that there is conversation created, the more engagement there are in your stories through things like polls or asking questions. Instagram algorithm basically gets the message that actually this account is getting lots of engagement, so they must be offering real value to their audience. And so they will share it with a wider audience that they think would really benefit from your content as well. So it's a great platform to have organic growth on, as long as your content is really resonating and connecting with your ideal client. So in order to do that, I know you might be listening to this and thinking, oh, crikey, I hate the idea of being visible. I hate the idea of showing up. And I totally get it. And basically what I said last week to the guys within the community that this is all new to is when you're starting out, you're maybe just setting up your Instagram profile and it's all brand new. The beauty of that is that maybe nobody's watching or maybe like very few people are watching. So now is the time more than ever to get experimenting, to get practicing, to take imperfect action, because if it's brand new, the chances are that not many people are going to see it. So it's the perfect time to be maybe making your little mistakes. It's the perfect time to be coming on video and maybe your voice is shaking a little bit. It's the perfect time to practice these things and learn from these things. I understand the idea of maybe being on video or being visible is terrifying, and there's nobody really that loves it, but it is something that does get easier and you do get more confident with it as time goes on. And there are ways that you can be visible without necessarily even having to talk to camera. So that might be just a video of you out, walking or walking your dog or something like that. And it's your text that's going over the video. If you're really terrified of you being on the video, it could be a video of something else, just a pretty scenery. And maybe it's your voice and you're doing a voiceover on the reel. So those are all things that might feel scary. They might feel daunting. And there's a reality that if you're not very tech savvy, it's going to take a little bit of practice and a little bit of trial and error to be able to do these things. But what that enables is that there are different ways that you can be creative, that you can show up with your personality. You can show up with authenticity, but in a way that perhaps might feel more comfortable to you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap up this episode because I think there's loads more that I can talk about and I want to break it down into more manageable sections. So this episode has really just focused around thinking about maybe reframing your intention around how you are going to use Instagram, maybe reflecting a little bit on how you've been using it to date. And is there something you need to think about moving forward? Like, is it really client-centered? Is it really relatable content on there that's going to have them nodding their head and being like, oh my God, yes, that's me. It's like she's literally inside my head, saying the worries that I have or what I'm thinking about or the frustrations that I have. Is it doing that for your ideal client? Is it really clear if I was to come on to your bio and look at your bio and look at your grid? Like, would it be super clear to me what your niche is, what your specialism is, and what your brand is? And by brand, I don't just mean the colors that you're using and the consistency that you're using those with, although that is really important. But your brand is also who you are. Like, what's your personality? Are you a little bit tongue in cheek? Like, I don't mind showing up on social media and being a little bit cheeky or sharing my personality. I don't mind making a bit of a fool of myself on social media. So I think people who have a sense of me, if they follow me on Instagram, would know that I have a bit of a dry humor and I can be a little bit sarcastic. And that's people knowing and having a sense of me. So the same with you, thinking about what would your brand voice be? Would you be kind of humorous and cheeky? Would you be quite controversial? Or would you be really gentle in how you show up? Like, what would your style be of how you would talk and how you would speak? Like, what would your tone be like? These are all things that really kind of embody you in your practice as being part of the brand. So I'm going to leave that with you for today to kind of reflect on and have a think about. And then I'll do another podcast episode. The next podcast episode, what I'll maybe focus on then is, how do I actually come up with these content ideas? And how do I then have the kind of the conversation about what my services are? How do I sell my services without getting the ick and without feeling like I'm some snake oil salesman or some car trader, like trying to be dead pushy? So I'll cover that in the next episode, but hopefully for now it's given you some things to take away, to reflect on. Do maybe as a little exercise, go and check out those 2 accounts that I mentioned, the people-pleasing therapist and the perfectionism therapist. That might give you a good little sense of what I mean when I'm talking about having a clear kind of brand and identity and niche, and think about how you could then do that for yourself. All right, I will see you on the next episode. Look forward to chatting to you again. But bye for now. So that's it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Now, if you found the episode helpful, I would really appreciate it if you could share it with other counsellors and therapists in private practice. If you'd like to find out more about me and how I can help you build and grow your private practice, hop on over to my website, which is www.prosperinprivatepractice.com, and you'll also find me on Instagram under the same name. But until next time, I will see you soon. Take care.